Welcome to the Breakaway Podcast, recorded on the campus of Texas A&M. For more information, check out our website at breakawayministries.org. We hope you enjoy the message.
Well, students, I want to start by sharing a story that you've already heard before, but I think your parents are going to appreciate it. About 5 years ago, I made a very unfortunate decision. I decided to travel from Austin, Texas. I decided to make the drive from Austin to Dallas without my wife, but with my two boys, who at the time were 2.5 and 5 months old. And so we loaded up the car, and we started making our way down I-35, and man, I was just crushing it as a dad for the first hour, primarily because the kids were asleep, but man, it was just, it couldn't have been going better. Everything was going so well, and so I decided that it was time for a lunch break, and so we stopped off at the Chick-fil-A in Temple. And before we went into Chick-fil-A, I just sat there in my car and I thought through everything strategically that needed to happen in order for me to get in and out without dying. And so I sat there and I processed through things really well. And so you should have seen me getting out of the car. Man, I just looked like, I looked like super dad. And so I had Andrew, my 5-month-old, in his car seat carrier. I had Noah in my other hand. I had a diaper bag slung over my chest. And you could just see the pity on the Chick-fil-A workers as I walked in. They were like, my pleasure, doing that whole thing. And so we go in there and we get our food and we're sitting there enjoying our lunch and everything is just perfect. And then right there in the middle of our lunch, my 5-month-old Andrew poops. And so I can't just leave him I guess I could, but I didn't. And I just decided, okay, we gathered all of our stuff up and we made our way into the Chick-fil-A bathroom. And I guess the stars were aligned that day or something, because it was like every single man's bladder in Chick-fil-A was synced up in that moment that they converged on the bathroom. And so I go into this bathroom and we are packed in there. And I drop down the changing table, and I've got Andrew, my 5-month-old, on the changing table. I've got Noah, my 2.5-year-old, down here at my side, and I am just ferociously wiping this guy clean. And right there in the middle of cleaning him off, Andrew just decides to flood the changing table. And right as he flooded the changing table, it's like that happened, and then I ran out of wet wipes. And so here I am, just stranded in this moment. Like I'm holding this bare-bottomed baby in the air, and the changing table is just flooded with water. It wasn't water, it was standing, something was standing on the changing table. And I mean, there is no place to put this guy, nothing to clean him with. And so as I'm stranded in that moment, I look left just in time to see my 2.5-year-old playing with the urinal cake. Let's pray and get out of here. That's kind of all I had for you tonight. Let me tell you what happened that day. In that moment, my dreams and reality went in two totally different directions. I dreamed of this nice, perfect, peaceful lunch with my kids, and it turned into bathroom Armageddon 2011. My dreams and reality went in two totally different directions. Isn't that how family life is sometimes? Of course it is. Because there are no perfect families. And so inevitably, there are going to be countless moments during the lifespan of a family where dreams and reality go in two totally different directions. There's the times where there's the dreams of a vacation that's packed full of laughter and memory making and quality conversation. And in reality, everybody's complaining. Nobody wants to be there, and everybody's thankful when they get home. There's the dream that your college son will want to have long, deep, meaningful conversations on the phone. And in reality, you get one-word answers twice a month. There's the dream, students, that your parents are going to really be excited about you taking a 5th year so that you can experience one more football season. And in reality, they're just not that excited. I don't know why, but they're just not. See, this is how life can go. There's these different moments where dreams and reality can go in two totally different directions. There's times where family life is full of joy, and then there's times where it's full of disappointment. There's times where everything goes as it should, and then there's times where everything kind of seems to fall apart. What I want to do tonight is I want to kind of try and help bridge the gap between dreams and reality. This past Tuesday, right here in Reed Arena, we started a new series that we've been calling The Good Life. And the tagline for the series is how to maximize joy and minimize unnecessary pain in college. Tonight, what I want to do is I want to do a family edition of The Good Life. And I want to talk about how to maximize joy and minimize unnecessary pain in your family. The good news is that the good life is possible. I want the good life for my family. I want you to know that. I want the good life for my family. I want my wife and my kids. I want them to experience a family life where joy is maximized and unnecessary pain is minimized. I want the good life for my family, and I want the good life for your family. Thankfully, the book of Ecclesiastes does a great job of navigating us toward the good life. If you don't know anything about the book of Ecclesiastes, it was written by King Solomon. King Solomon is the wisest person to ever walk on the planet besides Jesus. Ecclesiastes is classified as wisdom literature. There's different books in the Bible classified as wisdom literature, like the Psalms and Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon. These are wisdom literature books. And the great thing about them is that they're just so practical. And they give us tangible ways that we can pursue the good life. So if you want to maximize joy and minimize unnecessary pain in your family, I want to invite you to join me tonight in Ecclesiastes chapter 7. Ecclesiastes chapter 7. And I'll just say this as you're turning there. Wisdom literature often kind of bounces around. It can feel like you're reading like your Facebook feed or your Twitter feed. I told students last week that it feels like you're watching King Solomon's Insta story. And if you don't know what that is, parents, that's okay, okay? But wisdom literature can just focus on one topic and then it just bounces to something totally different in the next verse. And that's how Ecclesiastes chapter 7 rolls. And that's a really good thing, because what it's going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to hit on several different aspects of family life. And what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to give you 5 key truths that you need to know if you want to maximize joy and minimize unnecessary pain in your family. So here we go. Here's the first key truth you need to know if you want to maximize joy and minimize unnecessary pain. Here it is. The first key truth: consider your dash. Consider your dash. Look at Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verses 2 through 4. Solomon says this. He says, "It's better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by sadness of face the heart is made glad. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth." And so what Solomon starts out saying is that a funeral is a better teacher than a party. And so students, if you go out partying on Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, and just to be clear, parents, this is strictly hypothetical, but students, if you go out partying, what are you going to see? You're going to see a bunch of people living for the moment. You're going to see a bunch of people making momentary gratification ultimate. It's going to be all about having fun now. It's going to be about getting drunk now. It's going to be about connecting with a guy or a girl now. And what you're going to see is them living with these big assumptions that there are no consequences, the night will end well, and tomorrow they're going to wake up and life will be guaranteed. But you know what? You go to a funeral or you go to someone's house who's mourning the loss of a loved one, and what are you going to see? You're going to see people contemplating life. You're going to see people thinking about where they are heading. I remember when one of my closest friends from college passed away serving our country in Iraq. What his death did was it brought people together. And what happened among my group of friends is that we realized that we had been taking our friendships for granted. We realized that, you know what? We need to maximize our time together because life is unpredictable. And then we went to his funeral, and there were all these different guys from our fraternity who came together, who their goal in college was to get drunk and hook up. And what happened was they all came and you saw them contemplating the deeper things of life. They began to question what a relationship with God looks like and where they stood with God. Because see, this is what death does. What death does is it provides a sobering experience for the living. And it reminds you that life is unpredictable and you're not promised tomorrow. Nobody is promised tomorrow. Life is very fleeting and fragile. It tells us that you don't get to determine how long your dash is, you just get to determine how you spend it. When I'm talking about a dash, here's what I'm talking about. If you're writing, then on a piece of paper, just write down your birth date. And if you're not writing stuff down, I just want you to think in your mind, visualize your birth date. And then next to your birth date, visualize a dash. And then predict your expiration date. The average lifespan of a person in the United States is about 78 years. Let's round it up to 80. So just think, birth date, dash, what's your expiration date? Now, I want you to picture that dash. That's where you're living right now. You are somewhere in the midst of that dash, and I want you to think about that dash as a timeline of your life. Where do you think you are right now on your dash? The reality is we're not guaranteed 80 years, and so there's some people here who are just about a fourth of the way through their dash. Some people here are about halfway through their dash, and then others are 3/4 of the way or more through their dash. Aren't you glad you came tonight? Welcome to Aggieland. You might die soon. Jesus loves you. Okay, so glad you came tonight. What a way to start out the weekend. But Solomon says this. He says, the heart of the wise is in the house of mourning. He uses the word heart 4 different times in 3 verses. And that word, the Hebrew word that's been translated heart, carries the idea of the mind or the thought life, or your understanding or your attention. So what Solomon is saying is that it is actually wise for you to spend time thinking about the end of your dash. Because when you spend time thinking about the end of your dash, it can provide a sobering look at where you're headed and what your relationships with others are like and what your relationship with God is like. And so let me just ask you a question right now. Think about this. Students, if you were to find out that the end of your dash was coming, is there something in your relationship with your parents that you would want to change? Or parents, if you found out that the end of your dash was coming, is there something in your relationship with your kids that you would want to change? For either of you, is there something that you would want to bring up or ask forgiveness for? If so, why wait? What if there is joy waiting for you on the backside of a gentle, honest, even reconciling conversation? Why wait? If you want to maximize joy, what if joy is waiting for you? Or how about this? If you were to find out that the end of your dash was coming, is there something in your spiritual journey that you'd like to change? Do you know where you stand with God? A lot of times we just want to push that out and we get too busy, but honestly, there is nothing more important to contemplate than where you stand with God. If there is a God, don't we all want to know that we're right with him? You know what? You can wait till the next funeral so that it can provide a sobering reality check where you contemplate the deeper things of life and assess your priorities. But why wait for another funeral? Solomon tonight just says, you want to maximize joy and minimize unnecessary pain? Then consider your dash. The second key truth that I want you to know if you want to maximize joy and minimize unnecessary pain in your life is this: let God be God. Let God be God. Look at what Solomon says in verses 8 and 9. It says this. He says, better is the end of a thing than its beginning, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Be not quick in your spirit to become angry, for anger lodges in the bosom of fools. So here's what you need to know. Solomon starts out, and he says, better is the end of a thing than its beginning. That Hebrew word, end, it means the end result or the goal of something. These verses are all about perspective. It is. These verses are all about perspective. And so let's apply what Solomon is talking about to parenting. These verses, let's have them speak to the process of parenting that requires mass amounts of patience, okay? According to Solomon, when you don't have the right perspective on life, and we're applying it to parenting, so I will say, when you don't have the right perspective on life, when you value the process over the product, or let me put it a different way, when you're so focused on the process that you lose sight of the end product of parenting, the result can be pride and anger. So let me kind of explain what I'm talking about this way. Students, you've seen this before, but in 1998, a movie with Jim Carrey came out, and the movie was called The Truman Show. And what I want to do is I want to show you the movie poster for The Truman Show. Go ahead and look at this. Okay? This is what the poster looks like. And from where you're sitting, the poster probably looks grainy or pixelated. The reason that it looks pixelated is because it's actually a mosaic. And each of those little squares or pixels that you see represents a scene from the movie. And there's some scenes that are full of joy, and there's some scenes that are full of disappointment. There's some scenes where everything is as it should be, and there's other scenes where everything is falling apart. But the different scenes all weave together in a beautiful way to make up the mosaic. So I am speaking specifically to parents right now. So parents, please don't miss this. Parents, if you want to maximize joy and minimize unnecessary pain in your life, then you are going to have to begin to think about the life of your child as a mosaic. You have to think of your child's life as a mosaic comprised of thousands of different scenes. And the mosaic of your child's life has already been determined by Jesus Christ. Colossians 1:16 puts it this way. It says, all things have been created by Jesus and for Jesus. So what that means is Jesus cares more about your child than you do. And I don't say that to insult you. I'm a parent, and Jesus Christ cares more about my kids than I do. It also means that you don't have to be in control of your kid's life because Jesus Christ already is. The problem is that all we can see is the one scene that we're in this moment. And there will be countless challenging scenes in parenting. You've already been through hundreds, if not thousands. And at least in those challenging moments, it's easy to believe that one bad scene can ruin the entire mosaic of your child's life. So what's our natural tendency in those moments? Our natural tendency in the tough scenes of our child's lives, our natural tendency is to want to control our kids' lives. This is where the pride comes in. Remember what Solomon said. He said that better is the end of a thing than its beginning, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. When things aren't going as we want them to go in our child's lives, something in us wants to take control. And what we want to do is we want to begin to play God in our kids' lives. So this is going to be a very sensitive issue. I say this in love. Remember, I'm speaking to myself as well. But there are times where we really do want to control every aspect of our kids' life. So we want to control what their hair looks like and what clothes they wear and what extracurricular activities they're involved in and what they major in and where they live and when they graduate and what job they take after they graduate and where they live once they get their first job and who they marry and when they get married, and what their wedding is like when they get married, and where they will live when they are married, and how long they'll wait to have kids, and when they do have kids, how many kids they will have, and when they do have kids, how they'll feed their kids, dress their kids, and discipline their kids. Some of y'all are like, check, 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 no. I say this in love, but there's a big difference between loving your kids and controlling your kids. There's a big difference between controlling your kids and loving your kids. But the reality is, in the times where you want to control every aspect of your kid's life and you can't, you know what the result will be? It'll be anger. It'll be anger. That's why Solomon says, the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Be not quick in your spirit to become angry. See, one of the hardest things for me to be okay with in my own parenting, one of the hardest things for me to be okay with is the fact that the tough times in my kids' lives are part of their story. And it's hard for me to deal with the fact that Jesus is okay with those being a part of their story, because I want to control their lives and I want to shelter their lives. But the reality is, God is somehow going to use those scenes to make the mosaic of their lives more beautiful. So let me just tell you this is just in my opinion, but in my opinion, here's the point of parenting. The point of parenting is to point your kids towards knowing Jesus, enjoying Jesus, and displaying Jesus to the world. And sometimes that will mean disciplining your kids. Sometimes that's going to be making decisions for your kids when they're not equipped to make those decisions. But then a big part of that is going to be trusting that Jesus is in control of the mosaic of their life, so you don't have to be. One of the best things that we can do as parents is maybe just tape a note to our mirror so we can read it in the morning, and it just simply says this: there is only one God, and I am not him. Let me give you the third. That's way too convicting, so let's just move on. Let me give you the third key truth you need to know. If you want to maximize joy and minimize unnecessary pain in your family, the third key truth is this: seek wisdom. Seek wisdom. Look at what Solomon says in verse 11. He says this: Wisdom is good with an inheritance, an advantage to those who see the sun. For the protection of wisdom is like the protection of money. And the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the life of him who has it. And so Solomon doesn't normally talk about money in a positive way, but here he does. And what he does is he compares wisdom to having money. And the point he makes is that, you know what? If you have money, it can get you out of a bind. So students, if you're running low on cash, and I don't know, say your parents come to town for family weekend and they hook you up, that can kind of get you out of a bind and you're ready to roll again. Wisdom is better than money because it won't just get you out of a bind. According to Solomon, it will save your life. So parents in the room, let me just give you my definition of parenting. And you have to remember, I'm only 7 years into it. So it might be adjusted at some point, but in my opinion, here's my definition of parenting. Parenting is the process in which you experience one crisis after another and you have no clue what you're doing. That's my definition of parenting. I don't know if it's right, but that's kind of been my experience with it. And it started all the way back at the hospital. At least when we had our 2 kids, they let you stay for 48 hours. And they don't flex on that. But you know that feeling when you had your first child and it was time to go home and something in you was like, are they really gonna let us leave with our kid? Like I'm not exactly sure that if we leave, it will go well. That same feeling has just manifested itself in 100 other different ways. I mean, we've experienced it with potty training. We've experienced it the first time that one of our kids got picked on at school. We've experienced it when our kids have gotten in trouble. Like, we've experienced those feelings of, I'm not really equipped for this. I kind of have no clue what I'm doing right now. And I just laugh at the times when I was a youth pastor and I had no kids and I sat with parents of teenagers and they were asking me for advice. I've realized that the best parents in the world are those who don't have kids yet, because they can just look and say, well, when I have kids, they're going to be like this. It's like, oh, sweet child, you have no clue what you are talking about right now. But I just remember sitting there giving them advice. And if you're out there listening, I just want to say I'm sorry for acting like I knew anything, because I don't. And so because of that, I've made tons of mistakes as a parent. Tons of mistakes. The worst mistakes are when I give out punishments where I'm hurt more than they are. Have you ever done that? It's like, you're grounded from driving. Dang it, now I have to take you to school. I didn't think this through. You know what I've found to be helpful? What I've found to be helpful is having a couple men that I can call who are a few life stages ahead of me, so I can call them when I'm redlining. And I can just say, hey, I have no clue how to handle this. How did you handle it? Parents, do you have anyone like that in your life? Do you have a couple women or a couple men who are a few life stages ahead? Because here's why I even bring that up. What I've found is that as age increases, teachability decreases. As age increases, teachability decreases, but this is just a fact. There is always something else that you can do or change to be a better parent. And I don't say that to make you feel like a failure. I just say that as a fact. There is always something that can be tweaked in your parenting so that you will be more effective. And so one of the best things you can do is just have a couple men or a couple women who are a few life stages ahead of you. What would it look like for you to have a couple men or women that you could call and just say, hey, what did it look like for you to encourage your kids when they were off at college? What did those phone calls look like? What did it look like when they were home for the holidays or home over the summer? What did it look like for you when you became an in-law to somebody? How do you be a good in-law? And I'm just trying to prepare for the future. What does it look like to be a good grandparent? I'm trying to prepare. I don't want to act like I have it figured out because I'm going to step into these different scenes. The scene is going to change and I'm going to find myself in yet another experience where I don't know what I'm doing. Do you have those people in your life? And then students, let me just say this. If you want to help your parents sleep better at night, then get some wise counsel in your life, like people who can kind of talk you off the ledge of impulsive choices. Like, hey, I had a great idea. I'm going to drop out of school and go teach ski lessons in Colorado. Let's talk about it. Get some wise counsel in your life. Some people a couple life stages ahead who can speak in. And parents, you're going to love hearing this. Students, you're not going to like that I said this, but I will just never forget this time when I was home with my parents and I was talking to my dad. And I opened up to him, which was something that I didn't do that much. And I opened up to him and he spoke wisdom into my life. And I had this realization, like, he knows what he's talking about. I don't understand. You're not supposed to have wisdom. You're my parent. And then there's been times where I've been talking to my mom and she's just breathed words of encouragement that have been Christ-centered. And I've been like, wait, what? I didn't expect that from you. I tell you that just to say, students, you know what? It's possible that one of the best sources of wisdom could be your parent. And so I don't know when it was for me when it kind of turned the corner from my parents being people that I kind of tried to block out to being people that I invited in. But I hope that time comes early for you. And then when it comes to seeking wisdom, let me just remind you of the words of Proverbs 9, verses 10 through 11. Look at what it says. It says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is insight. Do you see what that's saying? It's saying the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Do you know what it means to fear God? It doesn't mean to be afraid of him. What it means is to see him for who he truly is and to respond rightly in light of who he is. And there is wisdom in this. Have you ever thought about the fact that God literally has all of the wisdom in the world? There's nothing he doesn't know. He always knows the best thing to do in any circumstance. And here's the greatest part. He delights in unleashing his wisdom to people who ask for it in faith. If you're wondering how to love your child, all you have to do is look at the love of Jesus Christ, who stepped out of heaven and into earth and gave his life freely. He laid down his life for us. That's love. Students, if you want to know how to submit to your parents, all you have to do is look at how Jesus Christ submitted to his Father in the garden when he prayed, not my will, but your will be done. You know what this means? Please don't miss this. All eyes on me. Here's what this means. It means, students, the best thing you can do for your family is walk with Jesus Christ. And parents, the best thing that you can do for your family is walk with Jesus Christ. The fourth key truth that I want you to know if you want to maximize joy and minimize unnecessary pain is this. Get good at asking for and extending forgiveness. Look at what Solomon says in verse 20. He says this. He says, surely there is not a righteous man on earth who does good and never sins. Do you know what this means? It means there are no perfect parents and there are no perfect kids. That means we are all sinners. This means that within our families, we will hurt each other and we will be hurt by each other. And so one of the best things you can do to maximize joy and minimize unnecessary pain is learn how to say the words, I am sorry. Will you forgive me? And then to say the words, I forgive you. Let's just practice that real quick. Let's just say that out loud. Just repeat after me. I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? And then say this, I forgive you. Okay, that was not everyone. Okay, that's okay. But let me just ask you this. I really want you to think about this. Is that the first time that you've said those words in the presence of your parents or in the presence of your kids? Parents, I want you to know one of the best things you can do for your kids is apologize when you've screwed up as a parent. It's one of the best things you can do for your kids. You don't need to be a perfect parent. You can't be. But you can be a genuine, authentic one who owns it when you screw up. Man, what a legacy to pour into your kids so that when they have their own families, they gladly own it when they screw up. And you know what, kids? One of the best ways that you can respect your parents and honor them is by asking their forgiveness when you blow it. It's one of the best things you can do. You want to know where unnecessary pain really thrives? Unnecessary pain really flourishes where family members are always right and never wrong. Unnecessary pain flourishes where family members defend all of their actions. It flourishes where family members react to the person instead of first responding to God. It flourishes where there's a lack of forgiveness and an abundance of bitterness. You need to know if you are dealing with bitterness, the person who will get hurt the most is you. I'll just say this, forgiveness truly begins to make sense. Forgiveness truly makes sense when we begin to realize just how deeply we need God to forgive us. That's when forgiveness really begins to make sense. It's when we realize our deep need for the forgiveness of God. Let me illustrate it this way. When my son Noah was 2 years old and he first started going off to preschool, there were days where he would bring home artwork. And when Noah was 2 years old, his artwork at different times would simply be a white piece of paper with a purple crown line drizzled across it. And this is going to make me sound like a really bad dad, but there was nothing praiseworthy about this artwork. There was nothing in me that saw this and I was like, oh my gosh, Kat, this is Presh, short for precious. Frame this baby, put it above my desk. This is my inspiration. This is where I'm headed. This is my motivation to live. Nothing in that. It didn't even make the fridge. Nothing praiseworthy about this artwork, but then there were other days where Noah would bring home this artwork that was full of cotton balls and glitter, and his name would be written in cursive. And it was very clear Noah had not done this artwork. It had been done for him. It had been done on his behalf by his teacher, but he would walk in and he would be so proud of it and we would celebrate it and we would talk about how great it is and our house would be full of joy because of it. You want to know why I tell you that? I tell you that because you need to know if you were to pull all of your best days together and you were to present them to God, they would be nothing more than a white piece of paper with a purple crown line drizzled across them. That's it. Solomon explains why in verse 29. Look at what he says. 7 verse 29. He says, see, this alone I found, that God made man upright, but they have sought out many schemes. You know what he's saying? He's pointing all the way back to the Garden of Eden, where God made Adam and Eve to be upright, to live in perfect relationship with him. But in Genesis chapter 3, the evil one came in and tempted them. And they bought into the lie that God was holding out on them. They bought into the lie that there was more life to be found outside of God. And when they believed that lie, this world was fractured and a relationship with God was broken. And that sin has been passed down to each one of us. Every single one of us has bought into the lie that there is more life to be found outside of God. And so because of that, our relationship with God has been fractured. And we want to believe that life, in terms of just getting right with God, it's just about being a good person or making sure that you go to church sometimes or giving money to charity or just being morally above average in our nation or just identifying with Christianity because it's kind of the predominant religion in America. But if the Bible is true, then even if you were to take all of that and present it to God, it really would be nothing more than a white piece of paper with a purple crown line drizzled across it, because our sinful hearts cancel out any beauty. We don't deserve God to celebrate us. What we deserve is for God to judge us. See, the only work that is worthy of God's celebration is the beautiful work of Jesus Christ on the cross for you and for me. See, the reason that the cross is the centerpiece of Christianity is because Jesus Christ, who wasn't as God, stepped out of heaven, and on earth he lived the life that we couldn't, a perfect life. And then he died the death that we deserve to die. Again, we deserve God's judgment. Jesus bore the judgment of God. The wrath of God that was destined for us was diverted onto Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ absorbed the wrath of God for you and for me. And then on the third day, he was buried. And then on the third day, he walked out of the tomb. And it was a demonstration that the God of the universe had accepted Jesus' payment for our sin. And so through faith in Jesus Christ, when you come to this moment where you invite Jesus in and you realize who Jesus is and what he's accomplished for you on the cross, you know what happens? Jesus' work is counted as your work. And so just as we celebrated that artwork done by the teacher as if it was Noah's, God celebrates us as his children because the beautiful work of Jesus Christ has been credited to our accounts. And when God sees us, he doesn't see our sin any longer. He sees the perfection of his son Jesus, and he pours out his love, acceptance, approval, and favor. Do you know Jesus Christ? Best thing you can do for your family is walk with Jesus Christ. It's to know Jesus, enjoy Jesus, and display Jesus to the world. The fifth key truth, if you want to maximize joy and minimize unnecessary pain in your family, is simply this: to pray together. Families who pray together stay together. And so I want to give you an opportunity to do that right now. And so here's what I'll ask you to do. I want to ask you guys to kind of huddle up as best as you can. If you need to stand up and do this, you can. But I'm going to ask you to get in a place with your family where you guys can be together. So go ahead and do that right now. And here's what I want to ask you parents to do. For you parents here, what I want to ask you to do is I just want to invite you to put your arm around your student, your child. If you want to hold hands with your student, you can do that. But I just want to invite you, put your arms around your child. You know, parents, a lot of times we pray for our kids, but we rarely have the opportunity to pray with our kids. And so I want to give you that opportunity right now. And students, if you're listening, you know what? You will know if this is a really uncomfortable moment for your parents. And so if that's the case, if you know that this is an uncomfortable moment for your parents, student, I just want you to take the lead and you just take a moment and pray for your family. And if you guys feel too uncomfortable, you guys can just have a moment of silence together. This isn't going to be a long moment. But just take a step right now together as a family. Parents, I want you to pray for your kids. And then kids, pray for your family, your parents, just for a moment. And then I'll close us. Take a moment and pray.